Minister of Education, Melissa Gums. This budget and the policy priority supporting it reflect the ministry's From Library Experience to New Beginnings. Ms. K. Henry pursues further studies. Minister of SZV, Clarette Connor. I present the policy-based budget. For this ministry, for 2026, Minister of Justice, Natalie Tackling on the budget. From the ministry, 113.8 million. From the island of St. Martin, this is SXM Daily News for August 25th, 2026. Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Melissa Gums. This budget and the policy priorities supporting it reflect the ministry's commitment to building a robust, streamlined and innovative semantic to investments in education reform, cultural and heritage protections, youth development, and the streamlining and professionalization of all sports sectors. The total proposed budget for 2026 amounts to 125.97 million. The Minister, speaking at the Member of Parliament in a meeting budget of 2025 and 2026.
The vision of the Ministry of ECYS remains the same: to foster a robust, streamlined, and innovative St. Martin, where citizens are empowered to become confident, literate, critically thinking, and creative lifelong learners. Madam Chair Lady, locally, regionally, and globally, critical thinking, literacy, and intellectual discourse is under attack. We see it in the way societies interact with one another at every level: on the street, in our homes, our schools, our businesses, online, and even in our respective political arenas. As the most important ministry in any country, ECYS's vision is to begin shaping a St. Martin society where this is no longer the norm. While we approach the execution of this vision in the face of stark fiscal realities, we believe that through clear and transparent communication, strong financial management, and leveraging our kingdom, regional, and international relationships, we will strengthen educational foundations, reinforce cultural and heritage preservation, and enhance and professionalize our sports sector. As always, the mantra remains that the areas of education, culture, youth, and sport are and require a community effort. It belongs to all of us, it impacts all of us, so it can only be successful with all of us acting in good faith. The mission of the ministry and its execution will be further supported by evidence-based policy development and timely, concise, and resolute decision-making. The intention is to support lifelong learning, lessen insecurities in our cultural identity, inclusive and true youth engagement, and competitive sports development while ensuring equal opportunities and access for all residents. Human capital development, in a manner and form that is suitable for the world of today and the coming world of tomorrow, remains the most critical foundational stone for national growth and adaptability. And the truth is, Madam Chair Lady, we are far behind. The Caribbean region as a whole is 20 years behind the global north when it comes to crafting an environment where human capital is digitally literate, consistently learning, and able to face an ever-evolving world. This requires us to recognize and embrace the reality that persons, whether young children, adolescents, or adults, are no longer learning or developing under the same methodologies that previous generations thrived under. The 2026 MECI's budget totals 125.97 million guilders, representing a slight increase of 3.51 million guilders, or 2.87% over the 2025 budget. This increase is primarily driven by matters such as indexation and vacation pay adjustments for teachers and MECI's personnel. Thereafter, investments have been earmarked for culture, education innovation, youth development programs, and externally funded projects supported through TEWEO, UNESCO, the Slavery Memorial Fund, and the St. Martin Trust Fund. Alongside strengthening lifelong learning, the ministry will continue its focus on improving education governance, supporting the modernization of education infrastructure, encouraging and incorporating youth participation and advocacy into its policy development, supporting the preservation and, where possible, the restoration of our cultural heritage, improving institutional efficiency, professionalizing our sports sector, and supporting sports development and innovation. A significant focus is the development of artificial intelligence and STEAM education. to prepare our students for current and future opportunities. Education remains the largest area of investment, with a budget of 77.5 million guilders, but it must be noted that this is predominantly due to subsidized education. Public education follows with a budget of 22 million guilders. Culture, youth, sports, and study financing continue to receive dedicated support to ensure balanced development across all sectors under the ministry's mandate. As minister, I am fully aware that to many, it may seem as though there is not enough allocated to, in particular, culture and sports. I agree, to an extent. These departments are policy departments. Thus, executionary funding should be funneled towards bodies that are mandated by government to do just that, execute the policies developed by these departments. These mandated entities would then be able to do what government cannot, leverage private sector and fund agency relationships, both foreign and domestic, for additional funding. For example, the revitalization of the St. Martin Sports Federation under its current board is a solid example of bringing our sports sector back on track with a structured, professional, and streamlined approach to executing the country's sports policies. Some major budget changes that I would like to point out. As you can see, the most significant increase is within the culture department, which grows by 111%. However, it must be noted that this is predominantly due to the $5.3 million fund related to the Dutch government's slavery remembrance funding. This increase therefore notes the provisions for that fund, which will be paid out as it comes in to the St. Martin Development Fund, SMDF, who has been designated as the fund and project manager for these monies. Therefore, it does not form any part of the Culture Department's actual available budget for the execution of their tasks. Staff Bureau increases by 39%, while Education Innovation grows by 29%. The increase in the Staff Bureau budget is primarily attributable to the additional technical support required to advance various ministry objectives, as well as the implementation of projects and activities funded under UNESCO-related programs. Youth Affairs increases by almost 14%, and study financing grows by 11%. These increases reflect real strategic priorities and targeted investments in national development initiatives. For an education sector overview, that's when you detect ministry. As mentioned previously, education continues to represent the ministry's largest and most significant responsibility. Outside of the 71,050,749 guilders spent on subsidized education, the remaining 6,449,251 guilders allocated for 2026 will have to support education reform, access to quality education, student transportation, higher education opportunities, and the continued strengthening of learning outcomes throughout St. Martin. This remaining amount does not account for salaries within the Department of Education, so in truth, the funds earmarked for supporting these initiatives is lower. I would like to provide some additional education budget insights. Alongside heavily funding subsidized education, school transportation remains fully funded at 3.5 million guilders. And I'd like also to point out, we've provided, since I'm often asked this question, what education subsidy accounts for, and I will go further into detail of that in a few moments.
Minister of Justice, Natalie Tackling, on the budget, from the ministry, 113.8 million. The personnel versus goods and services split is, of course, the ministry's ordinary operating budget. I want to know show Parliament a separate stream. The ministry's capital investment requests for 2026 draw from the department's multi-year equipment and infrastructure priority.
Everything I've shown so far, so that total of 113.8 million, the personnel versus goods and services splits, is of course the ministry's ordinary operating budget. I want to now show Parliament a separate stream, the ministry's capital investment requests for 2026, draw from the department's multi-year equipment and infrastructure priority list. For 2026, departments have requested a total of 4.47 million guilders in new capital spending. Looking at where this 4.47 million goes, transport and equipment is the largest single category at just about half, which is around 2.2 million guilders or 49.2%. This is largely vehicle replacement for police patrol vehicles under their multi-year mobility plan, plus vehicles for the Court of Guardianship, Immigration, the House of Detention, and the National Detectives. Several departments have flagged that their current vehicles' maintenance and repair costs have become uneconomical, which is the standard justification for these requests. ICT equipment is second at 1.41 million, approximately 31.6%. This includes, for example, a CCTV expansion for the police force to expand our camera systems, and new computers for immigration and border protection staff at our border posts. Then we also have an allocation of around 441,000 guilders for software investments across the justice chain. Other equipment is also budgeted at about 6.6%, and then we have some research and development at 2.7%. What is noticeable here, of course, that we don't see any new building construction or anything like that requested in 2026, but we do, of course, have the construction project ongoing for the prison, which is already fully funded from a construction standpoint and was taken up into previous governments and sits at around $53 million currently for the full project scope, which is partially funded by the country of St. Martin and partially by the Kingdom of, or by the government of the Netherlands. Then, moving on, looking at our different departments and ranking the budgets between 2025 and 2026. The gold bars are 2026 and then the blue bars are 2025. The police force remains the single largest line in our budget, which is 32.8 million guilders in 2025, and it's risen to 33.6 million guilders, which is an increase of 2.2%. And I want to say that this is solely scale progression and cost of living adjustments. It does not buy a materially larger force or really allow us to do much more than what we're already doing. But I'll speak a little bit more about the police force and where we gain through partner funding. Our detention, or the prison, moves from 15.5 million guilders to 15.7 million guilders, up 1.1%. And for our immigration and border protection services, there's an increase of 7.6%, up from 13.4 million guilders to 14.4 million guilders. The consolidated line for other programs, subsidies, and advisory councils sits at around 13.2, which is essentially flat. The pattern is low single-digit growth across the front line, but I want to say that this is a maintenance budget with two exceptions, which I will go into on the following slide because I think that they deserve some separate attention and they will likely also elicit questions from the members of parliament. These are the notable shifts in our budget from Justice for 2026. And 5 of them stand out, but I think that 2 of them will be particularly interesting to the members of parliament. So I'll deal with them directly rather than have to wait for questions. For the Coast Guard, you will see that there's an increase of 161.7%, from 3.36 million guilders to 8.8 million guilders. But this is not that there's 3 times the amount of vessels for the Coast Guard or 3 times the amount of crew. I do not want Parliament to read it in this way. The bulk of it is that the personnel cost for the Coast Guard, so their salaries, pensions, social premiums, are now recorded directly under this chapter rather than netted or carried elsewhere. So it's really a difference in the way that this is being presented in our budget that is showing this increase. Alongside of this sits our contribution, of course, as I mentioned, under the Kingdom Act on the Coast Guard. And under Article 13 of the Rijkswet, the countries of the Kingdom contribute jointly to the operations of the Coast Guard. St. Martin's share under the allocation is set by formula in the Act itself. And it is 4% of actually a long-term investment plan that was established or that was approved by previous ministers of justice. And this is actually a long-term investment plan from 2019 to 2028, totaling 168 million euros, which is for 4% for St. Martin, an amount of 6.72 million euros spread over 8 years. So it means an additional contribution per year of 0.84 million euros at our 2020 price level. And this is additional to the annual operations of the Coast Guard. That commitment, as I mentioned, was entered into by a former Minister of Justice with the then Dutch Minister of Defense. And it's now, of course, recorded accurately within our budget. Then, of course, we see our financial intelligence unit, the MOT, is actually a decrease of 44.4%. Their budget has gone from 3.14 million guilders to 1.74 million guilders. Most of that is actually a one-time projects and activities allocation that was close to 1.2 million guilders in 2025 that doesn't repeat, and it actually had to do with the on-sites and the mutual evaluation that was ongoing at that time. So I'm putting it here because I know that this jumps out, and I don't want it to seem like we have drastically cut the FIU's budget, because of course our anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing performance is assessed by our regional peers, and the consequences of a weak assessment are felt by every business and every household on this island through our correspondent banking. Then we have the Court of Guardianship, which has seen an increase of 19.7%, and it's gone up to 2.24 million guilders. And this is actually personnel cost growth and an increase in other social provisions, but we've also increased the contribution to foster care families this year quite significantly, while we're also carrying out studies with SOAB to actually look at the actual cost of foster care and what that stipend should be. So this is, I think, one of the increases that we're quite proud of as a ministry, that we were able to make this happen, and I'm sure that members of parliament will agree, and I know that there was a lot of discussion about this in the previous budget. Then we have the Attorney General's Office, the Parquet Péché, as we say in Dutch, which has an increase of 13.5%. And this, again, is driven by that kingdom contribution and what is determined by Rijkswet. For the minister and the cabinet, we've actually decreased our budget by 7.8%. We've lowered our advisory costs and our travel budget. And, we decided to take a reduction on our own overhead in order to accommodate other departments.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurances.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
Minister Claret Connor, the important civil servants of the government. In my capacity as Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labour, I present the policy-based budget for this ministry for 2026. The budget is about the people, is about the health of our community. It is about protecting those who are most vulnerable. It is about creating opportunities for the people to participate and contribute in society. And it is about ensuring that the services our people depend on are there when they need them.
The Ministry of Versailles carries a broad and important responsibility. Every day, our people rely on the work of this ministry. They rely on our health care system. They rely on social protection. They rely on our labor institutions. They rely on us to protect public health and respond when people are in need. And that responsibility, Madam Chair, comes with a duty to serve, a duty to protect, and a duty to use the resources entrusted to us wisely. We must also be honest about the environment in which we are operating. The needs of our people continue to grow. The demands on our services continue to increase, and our fiscal space remains quite limited. This means that we cannot do everything at once. We must make choices, we must set priorities, and we must ensure that every investment has a purpose. The 2026 budget, therefore, seeks to strike a balance between continuity and change. We will protect essential services. We will continue supporting those who need assistance. We will invest in prevention, access to care, employability, and community resilience. And we will continue the reforms needed to strengthen our systems and our institutions. At the same time, we recognize that the resources available do not fully cover the breadth of our mandate. That reality does not lessen the responsibility. It makes responsible leadership even more important. I would also like to recognize my team, as mentioned by my colleagues, of the Ministry of VSA, who have found ways to work smarter with limited capacity and increasing demands, confounded by external shocks we have experienced and continue to experience. I thank you for your continued commitment and contribution. As incoming minister, I acknowledge the sacrifices made thus far and will work together with you to find creative ways to overcome the challenges we face today. The work reflected in this budget would not be possible without your continued dedication. Our objectives remain clear. We are investing in people via social development programs. We are strengthening protection through collective preventative services, and we are strengthening our labor force with employability workshops and our Career Expo. Because ultimately, for VSA, this budget is not about numbers, but it is, as I mentioned before, about people. It is about the quality of services we want to provide and the kind of St. Martin we want to leave for the generations that follow. So, Madam Chair, as I turn to the presentation before us this evening, I will take this House through our priorities across public health, social development, and labor, the resources available to us, and how we intend to use those resources to continue to serve the people of St. Martin. And I'll keep it structured so that you can follow the numbers, the policy direction, and reforms we are pursuing. Let's start with the big picture. Our budget to 2026 is just under 109 million guilders, an increase of about 12% when compared to 2025. The core message here is continuity. We are safeguarding essential services while investing in reform, prevention, health access, and employability. We continue executing the country package reform projects alongside our regular operations. Our focus stays on vulnerable groups, service quality, and building institutional capacity. Our identity is anchored in a clear vision and mission, and that is empowering our employees to reach their full potential to serve the community with passion and compassion, while delivering quality products and services that meet the needs of the population, safeguard basic necessities, and promote a safe and healthy St. Martin. Our strategic objective sit in three pillars: public health, social development, and labor. On public health, we are working to improve access to care, raise emergency medical services awareness, reduce disease prevalence, strengthen data collection, and improve quality and safety of care. On social development, the focus is on improving access to service, reducing socioeconomic burdens, and strengthening disaster preparedness and response. On labor, we are improving job placement, strengthening labor relations, and raising employability for those who are now receiving assistance. As Minister, Madam Chair, I want to raise the standard of our service output.
Now the local weather forecast tonight through Wednesday midday. Warm and slightly hazy with isolated showers. Surface winds, today through Wednesday midday, east to southeasterly with a light to moderate breeze at 6 to 15 mph. Sea conditions, sheltered areas open. Waters state, smooth to slight waves, swells, up to tough 2 to 4 outlook through Thursday midday. Hot, humid, and slightly hazy with isolated showers. And now, 3 days weather forecast.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurance.
As young people across St. Martin continue their educational and professional journeys, the St. Martin Library celebrates Kay Henry, who is concluding 4.5 months of work experience at the library as she prepares to further her studies. During her time with the St. Martin Library, Ms. Henry gained practical experience assisting patrons at the circulation desk, preparing library materials, and supporting various projects and public activities. Her placement helped her strengthen her communication, creativity, and professional skills. Reflecting on her experience, Ms. Henry shared, "Every challenge helped her grow in confidence, communication, and creativity. She is grateful for the people and experiences that made her time at the library meaningful. Her next chapter is a reminder of the importance of education and lifelong learning. As Nelson Mandela famously said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. As part of our back-to-school message, we encourage students to embrace every opportunity to learn, grow, and prepare for their future." The St. Martin Library wishes Kadesha much success as she continues her educational journey and pursues her future goals.
This is our SXM Daily Newscast. Thank you for joining us.